Hi there, how you doing this week? For those of you who are interested in plotting your novel, find out how important that actually is. Hi there, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Lisa Oliver and I am a self-published paranormal author, and I have been writing and supporting myself with my writing for the past 8 years. And to this week, or today, we are talking about the importance of plotting your novel, which is quite hilarious because I don't plot mine at all. I am what's known in the business as a pantser. So for me to talk about plotting is kind of like, it's not so much going over to the enemy, but I do know that there are some important, for some people, plotting their novel is a very important part of the writing process. So the first thing perhaps you should know is the difference between plotting and pantsing. So pantsing is what I do. As I say, I write in the paranormal romance genre. So that means that I write about men who turn furry, or who have fangs, or who have magic, or maybe they're fae, or whatever else. I have series like the Cloverly Pack series, the Gods Made Me Do It series, and things like that. So as you can gather, my books are not exactly grounded in reality, which is fine because that's, I write for entertainment. But for my stories, because I write fated mate stories. So that means when two or more people meet, they immediately know through sense or magical signatures or the smell of somebody's blood or whatever other reason that the person they're confronting with is actually the person meant for them, designed by the fates. So it means that insta-lust is common in my stories, but insta-love is not. I'm one of those that believes working out that you love somebody, whether you're fated mates or not, is still a journey. And so, I generally put my characters along their journeys until they do realise that they do love each other and that they have forever, which is, the best possible happy ever after. But I think that's perhaps why I like to pants my stories, because to me there are just so many different ways people can meet. There's so many random coincidences. As if you think of life in general, have you ever sort of considered that maybe if you turned left instead of right, would that have made a difference to your life? Did something major happen in your life because of the turn you took in one point in time? And that's kind of what I try to talk about with my fated mate stories, is that it's just a random thing. Two people who happen to be in a shop at the same time, two people who go to the same club, somebody's car's broken down. There is a myriad of different ways that people can meet up. And that meeting, what would happen if that meeting changed your life? It was potentially earth-shattering. And because this is paranormal and it's fated mates, there are certain genre rules that apply. So this story has to play out. So, readers expect that. So for me, I'm quite happy to pants. I'm quite happy to be pootling along. I know my stories are character-driven. So it's more important to me who my characters are and how they behave. And we will be doing, I think I am doing no, I'm not. It must be over on my other channel. But I know I am looking at how important character flaws and things are. And I think that's on my other channel, which is Lisa Writes. And hopefully I'll be able to put a link to it up there. And if I can't, it'll be in the description below. Anyway, enough blooping. Plotting, stories that are plot driven rely on the characters that are in the plot to enact it. And that's why I prefer character driven stories. I prefer to read them and I prefer to write them. But character driven stories can still be plotted. It's just that you have to factor in, when you're writing your plot, your outline for the story, how a a character's personality impacts their actions and behavior. And this is a big thing that plots seem to miss. Or outlines seem to miss. Before I came on here, before I decided to talk about this, I had a look online at, you type in book outline examples, plot examples, things like that. And for a start, there's very little to do with the paranormal world, and I love my paranormal men, so I'm not going to write anything different. But finding ones that fully encapsulate how the characters influence the plot is really difficult. And the problem with having a plot that is so finely detailed, so, that I have seen it. If you go on to the Masterclass series, which you just type in Masterclass on Google and you'll find it, authors like James Patterson and people like that explain the importance of plotting, and they outline it chapter by chapter with bullet points for every chapter. But to me, I find that restrictive, and that's because I'm a pantser and because my character could just decide to lose the plot halfway through the book and go and do something else completely random. They're still going to get their happily ever after at the end, but it might have taken a circation. I wonder if that's circuit. No, it's not. I've got the wrong word. But anyway, they take a roundabout way to get there. And if anybody knows what that word was I was trying to say, drop that in the comments below, would you? Anyway, when you're plotting, you have to remember it's not, it's not a replacement for your writing. Plots are not able to show all of the depths of emotions. Outlines can't incorporate the inner thoughts of a character and the way, that they might respond to a given situation. It would be impossible in a plot or an outline to write those things, because if you did, then you might just as well be writing the book. So so it's important to remember that the outline or plot that you have written is only useful as a framework for your story. It is not a replacement for your story. One advantage for plotting is that if you're a person who is working, who has a lot of other commitments, who doesn't write as a full-time job, then and so isn't able to get to your story every day, a plot or a detailed outline can be really important to remind you of where you wanted your story to go when you come to pick it up halfway through. For myself, because I write every day, it's relatively easy for me, because when I sit down to write on, like today, for example, I will go back and read what I'd written yesterday to put myself back into the mindset, and it's fairly easy for me to pick up where I left off and carry on today. But if you've had a week since you've been able to look at your manuscript, and I really feel for you if that's the case, then having a plot or an outline, a detailed outline on the side, helps you think, oh yeah, right, I'm on chapter 12, and like this is what's happened before and this is what's going to happen next. So it does help in that respect, and I will admit that. There are another couple of issues, though, about plotting that do need to be considered if you decide that that's the way you want to write. The first thing is over-plotting. People can get very pedantic about their outlines and very pedantic about the level of detail in their plots. I have seen some beautifully creative and wonderfully extensive outlines that includes character sheets, literally entire books about characters, and world building and pictures and diagrams and maps and everything, and it is just incredible. And the amount of work that goes into something like that can take months or even years. But in the time that the author is designing their plot, their outline, their characters, and all that kind of thing. They are not writing their book. And this channel is for people who would like to make a living writing their books. When you want to make a living writing a book, you can't spend a year on the outline. You need to spend a day or a week at most on your outline. Then you need to be writing, because the idea is you want to put out more than one book a year. So that is where I see an issue for plotting, is that some people can get caught up in the plotting, like you can get caught up on the research. Like, for example, one of my new characters is a particular breed of sea creature, I shall just say for now, because I know some of my readers actually watch my videos too, which is woohoo, thank you, I really appreciate it. But yeah, so I was researching about a particular sort of sea creature, and I sort of looked up like 2 hours later and realized I had written pages and pages of notes that I'm not going to use. I had a lot of fun. I know a lot more now about that creature than I did. But realistically, my time would have been better spent writing the story that I was supposed to be writing in the first place. I've got to finish that scene today. Another thing that is an issue in people who rely on really detailed outlines and plots is that if there's holes in it, those holes magnify if they're in the story. And it can be very hard to change if you're extremely attached to your outline. It is more of a mental thing. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to change the plot. But if you've left a gaping hole or something doesn't make sense, that is going to be very hard to rectify. Once you've finished the book, it's going to involve rewrites, which you don't want to do. Whereas pantsers are able to adapt on the fly. And if there does happen to be a plot hole, it's usually a very simple fix to just sort of like add a paragraph somewhere to justify something and then just keep going. But yeah, so it's all very well and good writing an outline, but you cannot, you just need to remember it's a bare framework and that's all. So if plot holes and what have you happen, then be prepared to adjust. You have to be prepared to adjust us during the writing process. There are also times when your plot doesn't work. And this might be because that this is where you need to seriously consider the marrying up of your outline with your characters. If you've got a bratty character, for example, you cannot expect that character to suddenly become the hero in the flip of a page, unless it was an incidental thing. But, the brat who likes to kick their heels and throw their coffee mugs and be a pain in the butt are not going to be very good at a strategic pack meeting, where they're trying to fend off a threat from somewhere else. Unless that's the character's character. But it is really, really important that your characters are fully fledged people in their own right. And I know that in my worlds, where I'm creating on the fly, where I'm pantsing, sometimes my characters will turn around and do something I didn't expect, and I'm just writing it. And I'm not suggesting that that is paranormal in itself, although wouldn't it be amazing if it was? But I am one of those people who feel that my characters talk to me, in that I can see them in my head. I can see the scenes playing out in my head and I'm writing them down. And that's how I write my books. So how they might, sometimes I sort of think, I'll come to a crossroad, and it can just be a dialogue crossroad even, and I'll think, the character was supposed to say, oh no, it's all right, I understand. But maybe instead the character, she turns red and says, you know what? F you, I don't like it, bugger off. So it is those different aspects of your characters that give life to the outline that you've created. but just make sure that your outline doesn't restrict the way your character might want to live, might want to respond, the way they react. I find it confining, but I do realize too it's personal choice. Okay, because the key to using plots, outlines, whatever it is you want to call it, is it totally relates to the way your creative brain works. Okay, mine is like, what do they call it? Cockroach racing or whatever. You know, where there's a line of little beetles at a starting line and somebody says, on your marks, get set, go. And then they wander off and some head straight opposite in a straight line and others wander off that way and some fly up into the air and go God knows where. And there's always at least one that'll turn around and bite you. That's what pantsing's like for me. Whereas for plotting, it's more like a horse race, you know, where the horses are all in those chutes and they're all lined up and they're all meant to go in a one direction and they're going in a certain way and they're just going to follow that. And there's barriers up to stop them jumping the fences, turning around and going the other way or whatever else. Okay, so that's the difference. That's the difference between pantsing and plotting. Some people prefer the plotted course. Some people like to see what it's like to be bitten by a cockroach. It really doesn't matter, because the important thing is getting your book written. And if outlining your book makes you feel more confidence when you sit down and type in chapter 1, then that's important too. That is really important. But if you're plotting or you're outlining or whatever it is you want to call it, before you write your book is stopping you starting your book, then throw it away and become a pantser. Yours might be the cockroach that flies straight across the room to the finish line. It's no substitute. Plotting will never be a substitute for writing the book itself. But anyway, my friends, I have talked long enough. I have waffled on long enough. And hopefully you have a little bit more to think about in terms of plotting and pantsing. I do have other videos on this channel. A simple step-by-step guide to pantsing, I think, is up here. And let's see if we can get it. And I bet I point in the wrong direction. But how I actually plot or pants is over here. There's 2 videos. I do one where I plot a story. Ta-da! And one where I pants a story. I'll see if I can get it on that side. But regardless, let me see what's happening. 22nd of June, Todd is coming out. That's the 3rd book in the Tangled Tentacles series with JP Sayle. That's out on the 22nd of June. My book, The Infidelity Clause, is still out. It was my new release this month, if you haven't seen it yet. It's the first book I've ever written that hasn't had fated mates in it, so it's definitely worth a try if you're a fan of arranged marriages. And apart from that, as you can see from my backdrop, which I've seriously got to change, I'm enjoying my new house. And yeah. Hug the ones you love, my people. It's Pride Month, so let's celebrate Happy Pride. And I will catch you in the next video. Bye.